Good morning. It's Outside the Classroom. I'm meteorologist and science teacher Ryan Miller with you. A nice, beautiful, sunny spring day. We're here from my back porch, and we are also here to help you out to keep that learning process going as we're away from school and all those normal things that we would probably be doing this time of year. Good morning again and welcome. We have a really good week lined up for you here on Outside the Classroom. We're going to be looking at lots of different things, but I did want to introduce a couple of items here. Number one is the theme of the week. The theme of the week for the show is change. Change in science, change in math, literature, English, life, relationships. We've got it all hopefully here this week as we deal with change in so many different ways. But it's also spelling week here on Outside the Classroom. So we're going to start right off the bat here with a challenge to you, some homework if you will here. We're going to introduce 3 words each day. And the 3 words, what you could do is work on spelling and trying to make sure you can spell them. They are going to get a little bit harder as you head down the list here, but they aren't that difficult. But here is your homework. You're going to take these words, our spelling words for today. Change is the first one with that ch, and then museum, a little bit more difficult. I always have trouble with museum for some reason. And modification, which is a synonym or it means a similar thing to change. So if you could please do us a favor for spelling week this week, spell these words out. You can do a video spelling them out and send that video to us here at WJLA.com and chime in. You can send us pictures. Maybe you can write these words out in sidewalk chalk on the driveway or the balcony. But these are today's spelling words: change, museum, and modification. We'd love to share and showcase your spelling talents here by getting these 3 words for today, our Monday words down. And please send us some of those photos, those videos. How do you do that? Well, the easiest way to contact us, if you go to the WJLA website, WJLA.com, there is a link at the top of WJLA.com for Chime In. Click on that and you can share your videos, you can share your photographs. Anything that you have and you want to send us our way, please feel free to let us know. So we are going to ask and invite you to spell those words out, and we've got lots of cool things to look at with respect to change. Speaking of change, and actually speaking of sharing, we have had some wonderful folks connect with us through Chime In and some of our other ways here on Twitter as well, sharing and showing us some of the things happening wherever they are. We'd like to start out with a couple of pictures here right now. This is Julian. Julian is a senior at Osborne High School. He's going to be graduating here this year. Julian, very handsome. Julian's going to play baseball at Washington and Jefferson in Pennsylvania, Washington and Jefferson College. So Julian, congratulations to you. We're proud of you here. Another photo, this is Luke Spall. Luke is a football player at Osborne High School. He'll be graduating as well this spring here. So Luke, best of luck to you. We're thinking of you here and know that you're going to be turning into something really amazing very soon. And, well, you already are, but you're going to be continuing that amazingness here beyond. We also have some young scientists checking in with us here. This is a photograph here from Alba Huix, and this is Alondra. 5-year-old Alondra. She went out and was inspired by some of the things we did last week and was collecting and looking at bird pictures. And she was also looking at some flowers that she found throughout the area where she lives. So please share, show, send us the photographs, the things that you're doing outside of the classroom, and we'd love to showcase that information, those pictures, those videos. But there are a couple of other things we'd like to check in and share and show with you here. This show, really, this show is about learning. It's not completing tasks. We're learning something new each day, not necessarily checking boxes. We as educators, I'm an educator, really try to do one thing when we're trying to learn something new. That's activate prior knowledge. What do you know before you come to the table and start learning? What are the things that you've experienced? As you do the things we suggest you do and the activities we're showcasing on the show, think about activating prior knowledge first and make learning active. get out if you can. I know we can't get out completely out of the house, but I'll tell you what, you can get outside if you can to the balcony, maybe perhaps in the front of your apartment building, or even in the backyard, and take and try to make learning active. Speaking of being active and learning, I'd like to introduce you to a fine teacher, KAYE, and she is in Manassas, Virginia. She has showcased a new way to think about looking at an activity and the change that you can observe in some cups.
Hi everyone, welcome to Baldwin's Cup Stacking. So right now I just want to tell everybody what materials you're going to need. So we're going to need 12 cups. You can look in your kitchen, ask your parents though, ask somebody in the house if you can use the cups. You're going to need 12 of them. You can use paper cups. You could use a plastic like solo cups. But you're going to need 12. And it's best if you have 12 of the exact same size. So now once you have your 12 cups, so that we can get the air to flow through so they separate better, we're going to want to make some holes in them. So you have a couple options. One, you need to make sure they let you put, your parents let you put holes in them. So once you have approval, one, if you have a hammer at home, this tended to work really good for me. Okay, if you're using plastic cups, the top's gonna look like this. You're gonna put a hole, use a nail, and whatever works to get it to poke. Keep doing those holes until you have 5 or 6. If you're using paper cups, such as this, you could use a fork. I found it's really easy, well, sort of easy. Poke your holes and just do that 2 times. And then that's gonna work really good, so your cups will slide better. So you need to do that all your cups. All right, so you're going to see a few videos, and so look at the material one. Remember, you need 12 cups, paper or plastic, and then I have some videos. I have the 3 stack, the 6 stack, and the 10 stack. If you can, try to practice before we start the club. That way you'll be ahead of everybody. And try to tell all your friends to join us. Look for the invite. It's going to be on Zoom. Have fun. Keep stacking.
Thank you, KAYE. That was KAYE Nowak and her cup stacking activity. If you'd like to see more videos from KAYE, you can go to WJLA.com and on Chime In, which is one of the sections that allows you to share with us. Go to Chime In, and KAYE has more videos there on how to make this and complete this game, including all the instructions and everything you'd want to know right here on Chime In at WJLA.com. Change is the theme this week. We're also working on spelling, but we're going to start by doing one thing very quickly. I've got a glass of water, or a glass of ice, I should say, and I'm going to put some water into this glass. And one of the things that I'm going to ask you to look at here, let me put a little more in, as I fill that up, is I have this glass. It's got ice in it. So I want you to make a prediction at home. As the ice in this glass melts, will the water overflow the cup, or will it stay the same level as the ice changes, as it melts? So think about that for a moment. As the ice in this glass melts, will we see water spilling over the edge, or will the water actually stay in the cup as the ice changes? We're going to keep an eye on that here and check in on it in just a little while. I would like to go over a couple of other things. We have been looking at and sharing different ways to visualize our world and the items that we're doing. We are collecting data in the world. Please go to our website, and you can also work on building a rain gauge so you can measure and report the rainfall to us, or an anemometer to measure the speed of the wind. But when we look at a couple of things here, one of the items I'd like to point out and share to you is we have a resource here on the show at arcgis.com. If you go to arcgis.com on the web, you do not need to sign in, you do not need to create an account, but you can start doing some mapping right out of the box. And one of the ways we can visualize and look at change on the planet is to use this button, and if you click on Scene, that's going to bring up a globe and a map showing you several different things in the environment. Lots of different items to look at. So for example, let's visualize change in our environment, and let's visualize the way as we begin to build and draw and add things to the environment where we see change. And when you use and look at and allow yourself to explore the earth and the world in different ways, we can visualize change. Or we can actually start to plan out how we're going to use the earth, and then ultimately we can see how that change ends up showing up first before we physically start doing some of these things. So if you go to arcgis.com and click on Scene, that gives you an opportunity to look at and visualize the earth in a few different ways. One of the other items that I'm going to do is at arcgis.com, instead of using Scene, we're going to go to Map. And we've built a map that you can use and give us data. But I wanted to bring up and point out a couple of locations on this map that we're going to be hearing about here as we head through the show. One of those locations is out west of Washington, where we are in California. And we have a wonderful resource in this country, and that resource is called Death Valley. And Death Valley runs right along the border of Nevada and California. And Death Valley is a location where very unique changes occur throughout our globe. If you wanted to click on Base Map and change the look of the map, you can actually take a peek at it using the terrain if you wanted to see the actual topography of where we're going to be studying and looking at. But to put it into a perspective, this is Death Valley, and we've got a really interesting video for you to see when we return on Outside the Classroom. I'm Ryan Miller, science teacher and meteorologist here. We're going to be looking at things heading into Death Valley. When we return, we've also got some cool physics demonstrations of change, and that's in just a few moments. Good morning. Welcome back to Outside the Classroom. I'm Ryan Miller. Thanks so much for joining us here on this week of looking at change and this week of spelling, with some challenges coming to you here and how you can spell out and share and showcase your spelling talents with us. We're looking at change in the environment, change on maps. And one of the things I'd like to point out, please, is that we have lots of change across the United States of America and really the world. And you can visualize change actually by using maps. If you go to arcgis.com and click on Map, you can see change across this map in particular. And you can see some things that are changing as you move from left to right or right to left. And when I go ahead and add a couple of things to this map to give you some idea of where we're looking, we have California. And California, one of the bigger cities in California, if not the biggest city, is Los Angeles. And just to the north and northeast, so we're going to head up a little bit and to the right, is the Death Valley National Park, about 190 miles away from Los Angeles. We're going to look at and showcase some of the things happening with change in Death Valley.
Stormwatch 7 meteorologist RACHAEL here, and as we continue learning outside the classroom, I wanted to bring you to a unique location, Death Valley, California. It's actually somewhere I've been lucky enough to visit on my own, but it is the hottest, the driest, and the lowest national park in the country. And to top it off, it's also home to the hottest temperature ever recorded around the world. On July 10th, 1913, Death Valley recorded a temperature of 134 degrees Fahrenheit. I cannot even imagine that. And as the driest place in North America, it averages only 2 inches of rain a year. There have been a couple of years on record there's actually been 0 rainfall whatsoever. Now, you may not know this, but Death Valley does actually get all 4 seasons. It can be fairly pleasant in the winter and spring, but summer is typically in the 120s in the afternoon, with average overnight lows dropping to a cool 90. I happened to be there in the peak of the summer. I went in July with my sister and we got to feel the extreme heat. I've got a picture of me next to a thermometer reading 121 degrees. Shortly after that picture was taken, it hit 122. And I've got to tell you, you don't understand it until you've felt it. We tried to go to Badwater Basin, which is the lowest elevation in the park, 282 feet below sea level. I had a cup full of water and I made it maybe 20 feet before we had to turn around.
It's hard to describe the heat here, but one way I can describe it is that, you know, everybody has a household oven. Turn that oven onto the highest temperature, you know, let it heat up for a while, and then open the door, stick your face near it, and you feel that rush of that just hot, dry air coming out of your oven. That's what it feels like here.
So why is Death Valley so hot? Well, there's really nothing to block the sun from reaching the ground, and because it's a valley surrounded by mountains on both sides, there's really no way for the heat to escape. And then in terms of it being so dry, there are actually 4 mountain ranges between the Pacific Ocean and Death Valley. And so we have what's called the rain shadow effect, where all of the rain comes out on the west side of the mountains and there's just nothing left by the time you get to the east side. Forecast for Death Valley for the next week or so, 70s and 80s. It is springtime, so it's actually not that much hotter than what we're going to be seeing here. But again, in the summer, you really just cannot beat that heat. We're going to have more lessons throughout the week, Monday through Friday, outside the classroom, 9 a.m., on air and online.
That was meteorologist Rachel KAYE, a colleague of mine, with an interesting look at Death Valley, California. We're going to keep looking at change, and right now here's an interesting example of change. I have a balloon that I blew up here not too long ago, and we're going to look at this balloon. And right now it's about, I don't know, Rich, what do you think? About 62 degrees outside right now? Yep, and we've got a balloon that is, for the most part, stable. But I'm going to use, this is a little wart remover that I got from the store. And please, if you're going to do any of these or replicate any of these at home, you need parent supervision to make this happen. But oftentimes, to get rid of a wart, you can cool things down, and you can use certain chemicals to cool things down. And I'm going to spray this balloon with this wart remover, and if you'll notice, it's going to begin to change. And as it changes, and as I pour this onto the balloon, you're going to see those physical changes happening. If you look at the balloon, it's starting to shrink. The balloon is starting to collapse a little bit, and it's getting colder and colder and colder as I keep spraying some of this onto the balloon. So inside of that balloon, if you can think about it, what's happening inside of that balloon as it changes, as it gets colder? Well, I'm going to stop applying it here, and then what we'll do is give it a few seconds, and you'll notice the balloon is going to start to warm up. And as that balloon warms up, you're going to notice that it's changing once again. We've changed the temperature of the air inside of that balloon. And it's starting to not be shrunk anymore. It's starting to expand as the air gets a little warmer. The molecules wake up and start moving around in there. And the balloon goes back from shrinking to the size it was when we started. There's an easy example of how change occurs in the changes that we have with air temperature in a very closed environment. We've got some really cool experiments as well to show you when we return. This is Outside the Classroom. And welcome back to Outside the Classroom on this brilliant sunny day across the region here, at least in Washington. What's the weather like wherever you live? Take a picture of it, share, show with us, and let us know what it looks like and what it feels like around your home right now. Now, we are going to be looking at change, and there's a couple of suggestions on things you can do to measure change and to look at change in the environment. If you go to the Outside the Classroom website, we've put together some resources, so you do not need to get out of your house here necessarily, but if you can print out things. We've got a protractor, we've got graph paper that you can use to look at and create some graphs and some charts, and we also have a ruler. So one of the things that you can do to measure change is simply head outside and start measuring the growth of plants. It's springtime. We're in a season of change right now. And if you wanted to measure the growth of your plants, well, we've got lots of plants around us here, whether it's the lawn itself or whether it's a new flower that's emerging and coming out of its dormancy in wintertime. But if you wanted to measure something and measure change, why don't you try and do something like this? This is an idea for you at home. Measure the growth of grass. And you can do that, and you can get a baseline measurement here and measure it in the same location every day, and then kind of look at and see how much does the grass grow over time. A couple of other things you could do, if your folks are willing to let this happen, you could take a part of the lawn and see if you can rope it off or just allow it not to be mowed or touched over time. And look at the changes that occur in that one section of the yard that you don't mow compared to the rest of it. That could be something that you could do at home. You could take pictures with your cameras that are on your phones and look at the change over time once a week. You can take a picture of a tree, and this is a great time to look at examples of change in the environment as we continue to get further and further into spring and we end up getting warmer. So there's lots of ways to look at change in the environment, change in plants, measure growth that's occurring. One of the things we were looking at earlier, as this ice is melting in this glass of water, water is not spilling over the edge. The water is staying put, and the water will not spill over the edge as the ice changes and begins to melt. A couple of other things you can do and look at change is I'm going to use a little bit of hydrogen peroxide here and squirt the hydrogen peroxide into this jar. You're going to need to make sure you have a parent if you do this activity at home. I'm going to add a little bit of dish soap, and nothing's happening, nothing's changing. I just put a little hydrogen peroxide in here, and I put a little bit of dish soap in here. But what we're going to do is add a catalyst. That is something that causes change to occur. And you can use yeast if you want to as a catalyst, and I'm going to pour some of my catalyst in this jar. Good morning. It's Outside the Classroom. I'm meteorologist and science teacher Ryan Miller. We're here to try and give you some activities that you can keep that learning process going. It's Change Week. We're looking at change in all things life here on Outside the Classroom all week long. It's also Spelling Week, and we do have some words, some homework for you to continue and work on here. If you can spell these words, and you can do it in a video, maybe do it with some sidewalk chalk, get the colors out, the crayons, the markers, the pens, whatever. We've got change, which is not too difficult, but nevertheless it involves some phonics there and some use of letters and words. Museum is number 2, and modification is number 3. If you can spell 1, 2, or all of them, that'd be great. We'd love to hear from you. And we are also on Facebook Live. We're on Instagram. We are on Twitter. We're everywhere. Please share, show, ask us questions. We're here to help and to be a resource. And one of the things that I'd like to focus on here is the idea of making learning active. It's about learning something new each day, not completing tasks. If you would like to share anything with us, easiest way to do that is at WJLA.com. We have a section called Chime In, and on Chime In, you can post your pictures, your videos, your lessons, your activities, anything that's happening in and around wherever you are to keep that learning process going. We love to hear from you, just like Alondra right here doing some science at home with very simple, easy things to do. We'll always and continue to provide you with some activities. Well, we've got some change that's happening outside. It's springtime. The leaves are now beginning to come out. We're seeing a lot of elevated pollen levels. That's certainly changing the environment and changing the way my body reacts to the environment. But I was walking yesterday and I heard something as I was walking, trying to get a little bit of exercise, and I looked up. Check out, but more importantly, listen to this video. If you can, turn your volume up for just a moment. We've got some interesting sounds for you to hear. That tree, it's a red maple in my neighborhood. As I was walking by that tree, the tree was buzzing. There were hundreds, if not thousands, of honeybees that were in that tree and visiting that tree, and it was so loud you could truly hear the tree buzzing and humming, and that's a great example of change occurring within the environment. So we're going to be looking at change in the environment, change physically. We are looking at how sound changes as well, and one of the things that's really difficult to do is to literally change the way you do things. And let's face it, it's a tough time right now. Our lives have changed, but there are ways to try and deal with that change. There are ways that we can make things positive and try to focus on the positive with change. And here's a great example of looking at change, dealing with it, and trying to do the best you can with changes in your life.
Thanks, Ryan. And I want to give a shout out to my Girl Scout troop 530 watching in McLean, Virginia. And good morning to everybody else tuned in. I'm so glad you can join us. My name is Lacey Rapini, and I'm an engagement manager at FMP Consulting. Part of my job is to help individuals and organizations adapt to change. Changes happen every day, big and small. Maybe you can't see your friends right now, but you can adapt by using Zoom or FaceTime or other tools to still video conference with them. I'd like us to try an exercise that I use in some of my workshops to teach others how changes feel and how to manage and adapt to them. Go ahead and cross your fingers. Keep them crossed for a second or two. 1, 2. Now cross them the opposite way. See? Like this. Keep them crossed. I know. It might feel different. 1, 2. Great. You did it. Now uncross your fingers. How did crossing the other way make you feel? Maybe a little weird, kind of different. Maybe it started to feel a little less different the longer you kept them crossed that way. I'd like you to take some time today to think about other changes you are experiencing. Then write down ways that you can overcome them. Think about how you can adapt to changes in the future. Thanks for trying this exercise with me, and I hope you have a wonderful day.
And thank you to Lacey Rapini and our friends at FMP Consulting for showing this activity, as simple as it is, crossing your fingers and trying to change that. Man, oh man, it's a very difficult but simple task. So change is hard. We all get that. But if we try to embrace it in several different ways, perhaps life can be just a little bit easier. But speaking of change, here's an activity for you to do at home. Pick an area that you can see outside. Go to a window, maybe your front stoop, your balcony in your apartment, and take a picture right now at the certain time that whatever you take that picture at. And then wait 24 hours, go back and take another picture of the same location and the same area. And then do it the next day. And do this for 5 days straight. And because it's springtime and because there's so much change occurring in the environment, one of the things you can do is try to look at and see if you can quantify, come up with how much change occurs in your photograph. How would you do that? How would you be able to measure change? Well, you could measure it with a ruler if that's possible, or just visually measure it with your eyes. You can also download a light meter. If you wanted to put an app on your phone, there's lots of free ones. Take a light meter out into the woods and measure how much light is coming through the tree leaves. And maybe there aren't any leaves at wherever you are right now, but then go back in a week and do the same thing. Through spring, we're going to get more and more leaves, and there's going to be change in the environment, change in the light, and that's an idea for you. This is Outside the Classroom. We'll have a lot more when we return.
Hi, it's Jackie Isle from the International Spy Museum with you again. And I know this week we're talking about change and transformation, so I thought we would talk about invisible ink. Now, invisible ink is really important to spies because it helps to hide their communications. We talked about codes and ciphers last week, but invisible ink or secret writing is another way to keep your messages secure, because if a message is intercepted and you don't see anything secret on it because it's invisible, then they can't crack your secret. They can't steal your secret if it's invisible, right? So invisible inks date all the way back before George Washington's time during the Revolutionary War. And George Washington really placed a great value on invisible ink. He called it sympathetic stain. But anyway, you can make invisible ink in your own kitchen with just a few simple ingredients. I have 8 different formulas that you can try out if you print out the sheet from our website. I'm going to try 2 with you using 2 different methods or 2 different approaches today. So the first one I'm going to try is lemon juice, just some lemon juice. You can also use lime juice, anything with acid in it. And you're going to write a message on a piece of paper in your lemon juice or lime juice and wait for it to dry. It should be, once it dries, it should disappear, be invisible, right? And then I'm going to change it or transform it, or what we call develop it, with heat. I'm going to use an iron. I think a hairdryer might work, but an iron I think is quicker. You will need supervision for this because it can get hot. I'm going to use a piece of parchment paper, although I don't know that that's necessary, and I'm going to heat that invisible message that I just wrote to see if I can develop it, make it appear by applying the heat directly on to that invisible message on my piece of paper, moving the iron. Now, in George Washington's day, here's a little secret, they used candles to do it, and oftentimes the candle would burn up the letter itself. So if they intercepted a message and they suspected that there was some invisible writing on it, they would wave it over a candle, and sometimes the whole letter would burn up. And then George Washington would get really angry if that happened, because then you lost your message if it was even there to begin with, right? So that didn't work. Anyway, as I'm applying this heat, I can see my message beginning to appear. And I think if I waited long enough, it would appear even more, but you can begin to see it appear as well. You can see the S in the beginning of a P and a Y, and then maybe I splashed some lemon juice out there. See how it's turning brown. If I kept going with the iron, I think I can get the Y, but you can see how it's developing. The second method I'm going to show you here is baking soda with water. I mixed that up in a little container, and then I used a paintbrush. I used the paintbrush for the lemon juice too, but you can also use a Q-tip. And then I wrote my message on my piece of paper. It disappeared. And in this case, I'm going to use grape juice to develop it. You can use wine or beet juice. This is an acid base method, not an acid heat method. And I'm going to rub my grape juice on top of my invisible message, and feels like magic, but I know it's chemistry. Can you see it? It appeared. So those are 2 ways you can make invisible inks. I got 8 for you that you can do right in your kitchen. Simple ingredients. Good luck. We call you tech ops in the world of spying when you're experimenting with science. So good luck, tech ops.
And thank you to our friends at the International Spy Museum for that really cool invisible ink exercise. Do some of that invisible ink making if you can, and share us and show us those invisible ink exercises that you're doing outside. Here's something really cool that you can do at home, very easy. Before you go and throw away those carrot scraps, if you have some carrots at home and the tops of them, the whole carrots, if you cut some of those tops, and this exercise actually comes from one of my very wonderful science teaching colleagues, Crystal Liller, and Crystal showed us that if you take some carrots and put them in some water and you just take the tops of them, they're going to regrow and start to regrow. That's a great example of looking at how change occurs, and you can do the same thing with onions. So simple things to look at change in your kitchen, change where you are. Here's a look at change as it respects and deals with reading and learning to read.
Hi everyone, welcome to an incredibly windy day today on Outside the Classroom. Today's theme is about change, so I thought we'd talk a little bit about what happens to words when you change the letters and the sounds. Behind me you see the word mat. I'm going to change the T to a P sound. Now we have the word map. If I change the in map to t, what word would we have? Yeah, you got it. We'd have the word tap. Now I'll change the middle sound from a to ah. What word would we have? Yeah. If you said top, you'd be right. One last change. If I change the ah in top to the I sound, what word will I make? Yeah. Did you say tip? You got it. Nice work changing words by changing the letters and sounds. See you next time.
That's another amazing, awesome teacher colleague of mine. And thank you to Donna McConnell and her wonderful exercise at looking at how you can change just one simple letter and make an entirely different word. Share and show us those letter changing activities you're doing at home. There are a few ways for you to reach us here. We are at WJLA.com. That's the website for the television station, helping us all to get the message out here. At WJLA.com, we've got a section called Chime In. Click on that little Chime In link right there. It will take you to the web section here that you can go and share all of your wonderful activities, lessons, and please, teachers, if you're doing something at home or you have something that we can do at home, we'd love to hear from you at WJLA.com. We're going to have some interesting things to do outside with very simple supplies coming up when we return. Once again, I'm Ryan Miller. This is Outside the Classroom. Thank you for joining us. We're looking at change in the environment, change in behavior, change in the way we do things. And let's all face it, there's lots of change happening right now. I just changed. I could not see a few minutes ago because it's so brilliantly bright outside that I put some sunglasses on so that I can see a little bit better and you don't have to look at me close my eyes. We're going to be looking at how you can take some math and with math, look at and measure change. You can go to the WJLA.com website and we have a ruler that you can look at. And one of the things that you can do is change the units of measurement that we use to look at and measure things around our entire world. If you wanted to take your ruler and measure out 7 inches, and you can do that by just printing this out, or use a ruler at home. This is, well actually let's measure this one brick. This one brick is 8.4 inches. Now I'm going to try and attempt an upside down 4, folks. Don't try this at home, whatever you do. Just kidding. Let's see here, that and that. Did I get it right? I messed it up. Sorry, 8.4. So that block is 8.4, but if you wanted to look at from a math standpoint and convert that, well, we've got centimeters on here. So 8.4 inches is roughly, and let me measure this out, about 21.5 centimeters. So if you take 21.5 and divide it by 8.4, you're going to look at and start to examine some relationships, and you'll be able to make some changes in your measurements. So that's one thing you can change. One of the other items that you could do is actually, we all do this at home often, or not often, I don't do it often, but maybe you do. You can make a paper airplane. I am not good at making paper airplanes. However, I bet many of you watching today are actually good at making paper airplanes. But this is an interesting activity that you can do at home to look at how you can modify and change the properties of your airplane so that you can look at how physically things might enhance or make better or actually take the airplane and prohibit it from doing really good flying. So you could take and then fly your airplane. Terrible, I know, I told you I was not good at this. And you could measure how far the airplane travels without doing anything to it, or you could get some tape out, or I actually am just taking a stapler. What happens when you change the mass of your airplane, and you put some weight through a staple, oops, on your paper airplane. Will this, and you can make some predictions first before you do this. Will this help the airplane fly? Will it actually not allow it to fly really well? So take and do some things to modify your airplanes. And then what you can do is get your rulers out and measure how far your airplane travels. Good morning, pup. So that's one thing that you could do at home that would be easy. Just modify your paper airplane. You could trim the wings, you could add tape to it, you could add staples, and then please share us how you modify your airplanes, make your predictions, and then figure out and see what helps to make that paper airplane fly. That's an idea for you. I'm Ryan Miller. We'll have a lot more when we return. Welcome back to Outside the Classroom. I'm science teacher and meteorologist Ryan Miller. We're looking at change and how change occurs in so many different ways, whether it's chemically, physically, whether it's socially and behavior. We are dealing with change all around us all the time. And if we take a look here, I have a simple sponge that I took from the kitchen. I am not going to be using that sponge again after I've done this demonstration. I put some hydrogen peroxide from the medicine cabinet on that sponge. I add a little bit of dish soap here, and I'm going to add a couple of things to this sponge. And we're just going to look at and see if there's any changes that occur over the next few minutes here with this sponge, looking at how yeast and hydrogen peroxide and a few other things actually end up modifying and changing the properties. But again, just to recap, we have spent some time making paper airplanes. And one of the things you can do to change your paper airplane is to put some staples in it, maybe on the wings, maybe shorten the wings, maybe you have a different design. I am not a very good paper airplane builder. However, I can make one. And over the next bit of time here, you can modify and measure out. And you can do this also by looking at the change in mathematics. How many feet does your airplane travel? How many centimeters does your airplane travel? The ruler that we have as a resource for you at home has both metric and English equivalent units right here, so you can have inches and centimeters, and that's an idea that you can do at home. We were also looking at change in the sense of having physical change occur. I put some ice into this glass not too long ago, and the ice is melting, and the question I had asked was, would the water overflow the cup as the ice melts? Well, the ice is melting, and guess what? We are not seeing the water overflow the cup because the water level is not going to change. The ice and the water are staying put. That's what we observe when we have ice in the oceans, the sea ice. As sea ice melts, water levels and the ocean will actually stay the same. They're not going to change, but when ice melts from land and goes into the cup, then yes, sea levels will rise. So that's one thing to consider and think about. Now, this sponge, if you'll notice, has changed. We have looked at a little bit of a chemical reaction occurring between the yeast that I put on this sponge and the hydrogen peroxide that I have on this sponge. And there's some big time changes that have occurred chemically as the yeast and the hydrogen peroxide interact with one another. So that's a chemical change that you could actually look up if you're at home and spend some time taking a peek at. It's spelling week on Outside the Classroom. We've got 3 words that we want to see you learn to spell and to practice spelling: change, museum, and modification. Those 3 words, spell them out. Take a video, share and show with us how you can spell them, and we'd love to interact with you. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or our website, WJLA.com. I'm meteorologist and science teacher Ryan Miller. Thank you so much for joining us. This is Outside the Classroom. Have a great day.